Good morning, guys. Happy Sunday. Karen here, excuse me, virtual faith and fitness coach. And every Sunday I do church before church. And this Sunday, it also happens to be my birthday. And so it's pretty cool. I am planning on unplugging a bit with my family. My son's actually sick with his first cold, and so I want to make sure that I'm present for that. And so I wanted to hop on really early to just share my story with you. So even if you're catching the replay, thank you so much for just all the love and the support the last few years that this page has been open. And I know I've shared a little bit of my story before, but the theme of this entire redemption story by the Lord has really always been that God's delaying and God's so intentional about all the waiting periods he's put in my life. And it's always protected me, and it's always shaped me and really developed my faith. And so I did grow up in a Christian home, but, despite growing up in a Christian home, I found that so much of my faith journey was really just me kind of piggybacking off of my parents' faith. I didn't actually own my faith until senior year of high school. It took me a very long time. Some of you know that I am not from here, so I lived in Egypt. We moved here in the year 2000, and it rocked my entire world. I left my language, my comfort zone, my family, my friends, everything I had known, I left. But the crazy part was the entire time I lived in Egypt, I went to an English teaching school. And so that's why a lot of you are like, well, you don't have an accent. That's why I ended up learning English, and that pretty much God was so purposeful with how he did that. Good morning. Thank you. Hi, Jen. So we came here, Boston, and it was complete shock. It was complete shock. And for so many years after we moved, I felt like I was in an identity crisis. In order to assimilate, in order to belong and survive in my mind, I had to let go of the Egyptian side of me. And this is, oh my gosh, this is actually going a direction I wasn't expecting to go this morning. But you know what? If that's what God wants to talk about, I will. So that's what I did. And that's not true, right? Like, we know that that's not what I had to do. But in my little 10 or 11-year-old mind, it was in order for me to belong, in order for me to be accepted, I can't be both Egyptian and American. I had to let go. And 9/11 happened very shortly, a year after, kind of like 6 months after we moved. And so, of course, I was bullied. I was spat on. Like, you name it, it happened to me. And so the assimilation process was kind of a nightmare. And I really started to lose any hope or faith in God in those seasons. And in order for me to conform or belong or be accepted, I had this unhealthy desire of approval. I began to not only let go of the Egyptian part of me, I completely stopped speaking Arabic, which really hurt my relationship with my mom. I wouldn't. When I was letting it go, I was letting it go. Hi, Dad. I see you on here. What are you doing awake? I let go of so much of that my mom and I couldn't really have a relationship for years because I wouldn't speak Arabic. And then I just started to turn to anything I could find that could bring me comfort, could bring me love, could bring me protection. And I was very two-faced for years. At church, I was one person. At school, I was one person. And guys, why am I sharing this with you? Because, every season during my birthday, I literally like to just zoom out for a second and look back, because when I see God's hand in my life and the times he's protected me when I've completely taken the pen from him and decided to write my own story because his wasn't good enough, or I felt like he was holding out on me, I'm so thankful for his protection. I still got hurt. I still went through some trials and a whole lot of pain because I pretty much caused it, but it could have been worse. Thank you, Dad. You're the blessing. Yay, you're the best. I love you. So anyway, all of that happened. Now, I pretty much ran to everything instead of God, and my biggest vice, I guess you could say, is actually boys, right? Like, boys. And, I thought that in order to gain that love and that protection and that acceptance, it had to be from a physical boy. Now, Dad, I'm totally going to throw you under the bus. Maybe he just left, but that's okay. Now, my parents really did forbid dating. And it was, I get why, especially we're in a new land, and America's very different in terms of relationships and how that looks. Literally in Egypt, well, now it's different, but 17 years ago, you literally don't date unless you're engaged. It makes no logical sense, but that's pretty much it. Boyfriends and girlfriends, those terms just didn't exist. And so coming here and you're seeing people kissing left and right and all of that stuff, my parents were like, you are forbidden to have friends who are boys and you're forbidden to ever date. So what did I do? I snuck around, and I absolutely just was so disobedient as a child, and I lied. I was a pathological liar, really good at it. And my parent, it was just a mess. It was a mess. The God protecting me in that season of lying was His grace. But there was a boy, and there was a boy that trumps all the others, right? If I look back at my story, there was one guy that really, pretty much, I put everything in him. This wasn't his fault. It was kind of my doing. And I still remember, I'm not going to go deep into that part of the story because I think I've shared it on here before, so I don't want to be repetitive. But the point was, ultimately, God snatched him out of my life, or allowed him to be snatched out of my life, after 3 years of a very intense relationship. And it was online, but still, back then it was AOL and you could talk and whatever. But he was my lifeline. He was my everything. I went to him when I was afraid or happy or excited or whatever. And it was both this, and the minute that got taken away, instead of running to God, that is when my running to food started to creep in. Thank you, Darlene. I hope you have a great day too, sister. And so instead of learning my lesson of, okay, God is trying to tell me that earthly things and people are not where I am to put my hope and my trust and my, that is not, it's Him, it's God. God has to be enough. But what did I do? I just replaced it with food. So I went from a human to food, and food became my second crutch to everything. If I was depressed, I ate. If I was excited, I wanted to celebrate with food. If I was scared, I wanted to comfort myself with food. Food became the answer to everything. Senior year of high school, it brought a youth pastor to our church, Michael Moore, and that changed everything. This man, y'all, if you're a mom out here, can I just tell you something, side note? To my parents out there, moms or dads or whatever, sometimes we reach a point in our parenting journey, I'm not there yet, where we realize that it is not going to be necessarily by us that our kids are saved. We've put them on the right path. We've prayed. We've done everything. My parents are the most incredible people you'll ever meet. I took that for granted my entire life until I was, until God redeemed me. But what they told me is that they just started to pray that God would bring someone that I would listen to, because I was done listening to them. That was Michael Moore. Michael Moore was an answer to my parents' prayers. And so he saw right through me. He saw the void in my heart. He saw what I was doing. He saw that I was trying to fill this void in my life, this emptiness that it felt like no matter what I tried to fill it with, friends, boys, food, whatever, it was never filling up. And no matter what kind of a front I put on at church, he saw right through it. And he called me out. And he was like, do you really know how much God loves you? That was the question. You wouldn't think that that's an earth-shattering question, but that is the question that tore me right up. Because that was what I was looking for. Love. Real, unconditional, just non-judgmental love. And I couldn't find it in the world. And so I knew who he was. I had walked with him and I left him, and it was the prodigal son story. And so, but it's funny, I feel I was more the older brother than the younger. The younger just pieced out and then humbled himself enough to come back. Whereas the older brother thought that he had to do X, Y, and Z to earn the love, but really it was because his father was a means to an end. Like, if you read the story of the prodigal son, the older brother did everything for his dad, not because he loved his dad, but because his dad meant his share of the inheritance. And I feel like for so many years in my faith journey, it was like that, where I was like, God, I will do X, Y, and Z, but then I deserve this. I deserve love. I deserve a career with this. I deserve. And it wasn't like, God, I'm going to just do this because you deserve glory and I love you and that's it. There's always a string attached. So God got a hold of my heart senior year of high school. And the rest is history. But no, like, for real, it wasn't an easy, like, it wasn't an overnight depression was gone, anxiety was gone, everything was gone. But it was a daily journey that was, this time, had the word hope in it. I knew I didn't have to depend on myself. I knew I didn't have to figure it out by myself. I now had a God who loved me and cared for me and knew all the plans he had for me, and all I needed to do was trust him and be obedient. When I met Graham maybe less than a year later, I don't really remember, that story was a shock, because I had told God at that point, do not put another man before me unless you are sure I can love you more than him, because men have been my issue the whole time. And so when Graham popped up 6 months later, it was the slowest relationship. I've never talked about how he and I met, but the summary of it is, we did things very untraditionally in college. Most people meet and they like to start dating and whatever. It took us like 6 months before he even asked my father's permission to date me, because I was like, yo, I need to build a friendship and spiritual foundation with you, because I'm not dating for fun. I'm dating to marry, and I need to find a man who can also love God more than me. And so it was a whole journey of like lots of prayer, lots of like bringing our parents in and like figuring that out. But that was one of the coolest answers to prayer, when God was like, if you give me the desires of your heart and you're willing to also hear my desires of my heart and align with me, not only will I meet your expectations, but I will surpass them. And this was the beginning. Graham was the beginning. It went from Graham to figuring out my major, to figuring out my calling, to going to grad school, to knowing where to go to grad school, to getting engaged, to getting married, to moving multiple times, to waiting for a son, to waiting for this business that I'm in to finally happen, because I loved it for years and he kept saying no for 2.5 years. Guys, this was the beginning of my journey with the Lord, and it all includes the word trust and faithfulness, obedience. And so in my last 27 years, those are the words that stick with me, is, if God is delaying, it's for my protection. Shout out to She Works His Way for that reminder a few days ago. That's number one. If God is delaying something, it's for my own protection. Number two, as long as God is glorified, I'm content. And really learning that. As long as he's glorified, I'm content. Even if somebody succeeds in the area that I've been wanting to succeed in. If God's glorified, then I'm content. And the last thing is that God's way is always better. And no matter what I try to do, I will never I won't always understand it. I'll understand it after he does it. It's funny, like, people think that I have to understand in order to trust. It's the other way around. It's as we trust that we start to understand. So that's my last 27 years of life. And so here's what I'd love to do below this post. You guys are usually reflecting on devotionals, things I'm sharing. Can I ask you a favor? In the last couple of years of your life, or the last, whatever it is for you. For me, it's technically, I don't remember how old I was senior year of high school, 10-ish years. In the last 10-ish years for me, those are like the themes that God has taught me, the themes that God has been putting on my heart. What's yours? I'd love to know yours. Like, what are the themes that in your journey with the Lord, they just keep kind of coming back? Scriptures, even like memory verses that have been, life verses that have been on your heart the last few years. What do you need to sit down and remember? Because if you're in a season of waiting, if you're in a season of trials, if you're in a season of it's foggy and you can't see, you've got to look back and remember the times of faithfulness, because they're gonna keep you steady. They're going to keep you steady. Oh, Jen, I'm so glad. Like I'm just I'm just a woman. I'm nothing special. I'm not any better than any of you. I really am not. I'm so messy. I'm so messy and I'm so weak. I really am. Everything that God has done in my life is his strength. My family sees me in reality. I am not perfect. I get impatient. I get irritable. I still struggle a lot, but God's grace is always sufficient and his plans are always better. And so just so thankful that he's using, and I just wanted him to keep using me, and I wanted to keep using you. So tell me, what are the top lessons you've learned on your faith journey so far? And I can't wait to read this. Like, that's what I want for my birthday gift. I want you to tell me the top things that God has been teaching you the last year. Whenever people sign up for my faith and fitness boot camps, that's the first question on the list. There's like a bunch of questions, but the first one is, what has God been teaching you the last year of your faith journey? I just want to know. I want to know. Because it's God. I love learning what he's teaching his people. So, I love you guys. Thank you for all the birthday wishes. You guys are amazing. I'm excited to spend the day with my family. Pray for my kid. It's his first real cold, all because his dad kept kissing him, because you cannot kiss him. He's so cute. And grandma's sick, but that's okay. I'm probably going to get sick. But anyway, happy birthday to me. Happy birthday to you, because I'm so glad you're born too. And I love you guys. Can't wait to hear your reflections below.